Welcome to a journey of faith and wisdom with Georgiana. I'm Georgiana, and I'm so happy that you are here again. Today's episode is going to be great. It's simple, yet it is powerful. Remember, this is a space where we share our personal experiences, give insights, but most importantly, talk about God's word, His love, and His wisdom. So I remembered last week, beyond last week, it was like for a month, I was a part of this project that I didn't want to be on. And my motivation was zapped. I was grumpy, murmuring, complaining. I remember complaining over and over again. Why am I doing this? Why do I have to do this? These people are so difficult. My energy was just so low. And one morning, as I was getting ready, word came to mind. These words came to mind. And I remember hearing these words for the first time, and it was many years ago. And the words were spoken by Joyce Meyer. Now, Joyce Meyer is a Christian author, minister, role model for Christ. You could look her up on YouTube. She's wrote many books. And I remember her saying in one of her programs these words: complain and remain, praise and be raised. I'll repeat: complain and remain, praise and be raised. I remember hearing those words and I was like, oh, gosh, I better stop complaining, because the more I complain, the more I will remain in this situation. Because complaining, for me, what it does, it keeps me stuck. When I'm constantly thinking about the negative, the bad things that could happen, that are happening, I get stuck. My energy is zapped, and it's like a mental fog. I just can't get through it, pass through to the other side. So I am so thankful to God that He reminded me of that. Complaining, if I complain, I will remain, but if I praise, I'll be raised out of the situation. So in preparation for this talk we have together, I looked up the definition of complain, and it's from the Oxford Dictionary, and it says, to complaining is an expression of annoyance about something, to protest, to grumble, and to moan. And so there is a trend, there is a pattern of the things that I complain about often, and those things I see that, wow, 2 weeks later, I'm complaining about a certain thing. A whole 1 month later, I'm complaining about that same thing if I don't take action. And this reminded me of the children of Israel in the Bible. Are you familiar with that story? How God equipped Moses to go to Pharaoh in Egypt to tell Pharaoh, let my people go. And how Moses led the children of Israel out of Egypt through the wilderness towards Canaan, the promised land. And the reason why I'm referencing the children of Israel, because they are a great example to us in this 2025 day and age on the dangers of complaining and what it can do in our lives. And if you would like to read more about the journey and the lives of the children of Israel as they journey through the wilderness and what complaining does, you could go to the Bible and look up Exodus 16 and Numbers 14, and that will give you reference. But there is a particular part of their journey that I would like to discuss for a few minutes. And you can find that in Numbers 13, chapter 13, verse 14. When it was time for the children of Israel to move out of the wilderness and go and occupy the promised land. And so before they did that, Moses he asked for a representative from each tribe, from the 12 tribes. So 12 men were appointed to go into Canaan to scout out, to look throughout the land and come back with a report for Moses and the children of Israel. And so they went to spy out the land for about 40 days. And when they returned, they gave a report. And they came back and said, Moses and the children of Israel, yes, it's of a fact that this land is a great land. Truly, it flows with milk and honey. And truly, it is a beautiful, lush, fruitful land. However, the people who dwell in the land are strong, and their cities are fortified and very large. Moreover, some of them are the descendants of Anak, and the descendants of Anak were large in stature. They were considered giants. But within the 12, there was 2 particular men who weren't intimidated by the fortified city, nor were they intimidated by the stature of the people. And one of those men was Caleb. And Caleb wanted to he actually was adamant, and he quieted the people before Moses, and he said, no, don't focus on that. Let's go up, he said, at once and take possession, for we are well able to overcome it. That's what Caleb said. But the other 10, they said, no, we cannot. We're not able to go up because these people are stronger than we are. And they said that they saw giants, and we were like grasshoppers in our own sights. And so we were in their sight. So if you go to Numbers 14, you will see exactly what the 10 spies reported to Moses and the children of Israel. And I just highlighted the last part, verse 33. It says, then we saw the giants, and we were like grasshoppers in our own sight. And so we were in their sight. And it's amazing how the Bible put our own sight. So they saw themselves as a grasshopper. And that perception of how they saw themselves, they mirrored into that. Okay, so if I am a grasshopper to them, then they must have that same perception of me, because I think that I'm a grasshopper, so that these other people around me must think the same way I think of myself. So the Bible is just so powerful. And what I wanted to illustrate is this, that the report that they gave was realistic. Yes, of a fact, the city was fortified. Yes, of a fact, the people were strong. Yes, they were tall. Yes, there were giants. But what they erred in, the error they made, is their interpretation of reality. They did not trust in God. It was a trust issue. And before I go on, let's settle that issue right now. That according to Hebrews 11 verse 6, it says, without faith, it is impossible to please God, because anyone, me, you, anyone who comes to God must believe, I will repeat, must believe that God exists and that he rewards those who diligently seek him. That's it. Our circumstances changes. The circumstances change when we believe God, because God is greater than our circumstances. God is realer, real than our reality. And I'll give you scriptures for that in a few minutes. Now, another thing that I want to point out about what happened back then in the wilderness with the children of Israel is this, that because of their disobedience, they had to wander around in that wilderness for 40 years. For 40 years, they were stuck because partly, I would say, there were many factors, but partly because of the complaining, they were stuck in the wilderness for 40 years until that generation died out. But when I did my research, I realized that the distance between the wilderness, where they were in the wilderness, and the promised land, getting out to where they should be, was only an 11-day journey. 11 days, less than 2 weeks journey from the wilderness to Canaan. However, they were stuck, wandering around the same mountain, going around and around and around and around for 40 years. Now, how long have my complaining kept me around and around and around the situation? How long has my complaining had me remain in my current situation? So I'm pondering about my situations, and I will invite you to do the same. What have you been complaining about for a very long time? So what's the antidote? What's the remedy? The remedy is to praise and be raised. What does praise do? Praise turn our eyes from the situation to God. Praise is all about practically going to God in prayer, truthfully and sincerely, telling him all of your concerns because he cares for you. God is the remedy. According to James 1 verse 5, it says, ask God for wisdom. Because some of my situations, I'm going to need wisdom, guidance, insights, answers on how to make that transition and how to transform. So God says in James 1 verse 5, he said, if any of us lack wisdom, we should ask God, who gives How generously, generously to all without fault, and it will be given to you. So whenever we need wisdom, just go to God. He gives it generously. And before I close, I just want to amplify that when we complain, we glorify the situation and it keeps us there, right? But when we praise, we glorify God. And by doing that, it's like we're lifted out of the situation. So praise and be raised. Praising God shifts our eyes towards Him, giving us an awareness to be grateful, to have gratitude, to start making a list and thinking about things within the situation of what we are grateful and thankful for. And I remember even in that situation, I started praying for the person that annoyed me. And a sincere prayer changes things. The person might not change, but my outlook towards the person changed. And that makes a wonderful difference. And so, God, maybe some of you might say, Georgiana, that's not reality. That's not reality. Stop telling me this pie in the sky. You don't know my situation. Well, I'm here to let you know that God is realer than our reality. In Psalms, God is the person who made reality, okay? That made time. In Psalms 90 verse 2, it says, before the mountains were brought forth, or ever you had formed the earth, God formed the earth and the world, even from everlasting to everlasting, you are God. So this time that we're in, it's now the year 2025. This time that we're in, God made time. I marvel, and I somewhat correct people when they say, the universe is telling me something, the universe. And I tend to say that God is not the universe, because He is the creator of the universe. God is the what? Creator of the universe. He is not the universe. And according to Revelations 22 verse 13, it says, Jesus is the Alpha and the Omega. He is the first and the last. He is the beginning and the end. And Colossians 1 verse 16 says, for by Him were all things created that are in heaven, that are in earth, visible and invisible, whether they be thrones, dominions, or principalities or powers. All things were created by Him and for Him. So that's the answer to your reality. Let's go to the person, to the God who created reality. So in closing, we have a choice. Should we complain and remain, or praise and be raised? So during this week, let's be mindful. Let's have this challenge together, that whenever opportunities come where we find ourselves complaining, let's remember, the more we complain about that situation is the more we are going to remain in it. Therefore, instead of complaining, let's go to the solution bearer. Let's go to the source. Let's go to wisdom, to seek Him, to hear from Him, to speak to Him about the situation so we can get clarity and guidance so that we can cross over. Because according to Caleb, and I'll repeat, we are well able. You are well able. God is well able. So thank you for listening. Please share with others. Subscribe if you like. Have a blessed week until next time. God loves you, and so do I.